Hi, boys and girls. Today I'm going to give you another example of how to use the partial quotient strategy to solve division problems. And I'm going to use the first problem from your Google form from yesterday. So the problem is you have 3 decks of cards with 52 cards in each deck. How many cards will each person get if the 3 decks are dealt evenly to 6 people? So this is a tricky question because there are actually 2 steps that you need to follow in order to get your answer. And this would be a multi-step word problem. So the first thing we have to do is multiply or add because there are 3 decks of cards and each deck has 52 cards in the deck. So that's 52 times 3, or we could add 52 3 times, which gives us 156 cards. So we need to now figure out how many cards each person will get if there are 6 people who are receiving cards. So that would be 156 divided by 6. So in this problem, 156 is the amount of cards we have that we need to divide or share with 6 people. So when we use the partial quotient strategy, we are using multiplication to help us with division. So I need to think about what times 6 is going to get me as close to 156 as possible. And boys and girls, remember that there are so many ways that you can get to 156. You could start with 2 if you know your 2's really well. If you know 6 times 2 is 12, then you can start with 2. Ask yourself if you can go a little higher. Do you know 6 times 3? If you know 6 times 3, ask yourself if you can go a little bit higher. I like to always remind all of you that we should know our 5's really well. So starting with 5 is a good idea. And then, of course, if you have a bigger number, like 156, you could always start with 10 because we should know our 10's really well. So what we are doing in the first step is multiplying. We're trying to figure out what can we write here on the side that we can multiply by 6 and get really close to 156. So when this number is smaller, starting with 2 is a good idea. But because 156 is a big number, we want to try to start with a number on the side that's a little bit bigger. But if that is hard for you, just remember you could start with 2. It doesn't matter what numbers you write on the side. Everybody might start with a different number. What matters is that you all multiply correctly to come up with the same answer. So you could start with 2 and keep multiplying 2 times 6 until you get to 156, or we could start with a number that's a little bit higher and get closer. So I always like to start with 10. So if I write a 10 on the side, my first step is to multiply. 10 times 6 is 60. And I'm just going to write a little note on the side. To show my steps. And I used a different color so you can see that what I'm writing here on the side will just be the steps that I'm following to get my answer. So the first step is to multiply. And in this case, I'm going to multiply 10 times 6 to get 60. And then our second step after we write 60 under 156 is to subtract. So I'm just going to write for step 2. That we are going to subtract. So 6 minus 0 is 6. I can't subtract 6 from 5, so I need to borrow. I cross off the 1 to get 0. Carry the 1 over to the 5 to get 15. And then 15 minus 6 is 9. So now I have 96. I am going to start my steps over. because I have a new number in the box. So now I'm going to go back to multiply. Only now I have 96. So you should be asking yourselves as mathematicians, what number times 6 will get me as close to 96 as possible? And we can use 10 again. If I write 10 here on the side, I need to multiply. 10 times 6 is 60. And the reason why I use 10 again is because I already know from the first time I multiplied that 10 times 6 is 60, which I think is pretty close to 96 without going over. So I'm multiplying again. 10 times 6 is 60. Step 2 is to subtract. So now I have 6 minus 0 is 6. And then 9 minus 6 is 3. Now that I have a new number, I can start back at step 1, which is to multiply. So I already know that I can't use 10 again because 10 times 6 is 60. We can't go over the number in the box. So those of you that know your facts might already know right now that 6 times 6 is 36. So we could write 6 on the side. 6 times 6 is 36. Now I'm going to subtract. And I get nothing left over, which means we can evenly divide 156 cards between 6 people. So now I'm going to add my 3 numbers that I used to multiply. 10 plus 10 plus 6 is 26, which means my answer would be 26 cards. So 156 divided by 6 is 26. And I just want to remind everyone that if you don't label your answer exactly the way it's written in my answer key, or if you leave off a label or spell a label wrong, or if you write 26 cards with no space, really it's simple little things that will cause the form to mark your answer as incorrect. So what I do is I go through all of your forms and I check them myself. If I see that you were marked as wrong when you have the correct number, so in this case, if you had 26, but you spelled cards wrong, or if you didn't put a space between 26 and cards and you were marked wrong, I would go in and change it and mark you as correct. So yesterday when I was doing that, I found that when I released the score to you, your new score, after I checked it, I was getting an error message saying that I couldn't send the score to your Google email. I'm not sure what's going on with that. So please just know that if you don't get an updated score from me, that doesn't mean I didn't check it or change it. I always check each of your forms individually, and I put the updated score after I change after I make all my corrections into my grade book. So if you're marked as incorrect, you know you have the right answer. Don't worry, I will check it and mark it as correct and put the correct score in my book.